Thanks, Bill. All right, well, welcome everyone. It's 7:04, and I welcome everyone to the Town of Hamilton Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, June 3rd, 2019. We're going to start off, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now, as we always do, we have a time period for public comment, which is usually about 3 minutes or so. So if anybody in the audience tonight would like to come to the podium, introduce themselves, if you could just state your name and address and speak into that microphone so people at home can hear you.
Thank you for this opportunity. Robin Davis, 57 Lois Street in Hamilton. So brief question about the proposed marijuana growing facility at Green Meadows. I'm kind of new to this whole discussion, and I understand that the selectmen voted unanimously to establish a host community agreement with Green Meadows, and that is now before the planning board and the ZBA. So I guess I'm curious how you could support putting a large industrial operation in a residential agricultural district.
So unfortunately, this is really for public comment, not for discussion, so.
Oh, I just stated.
Yeah, and so we take your.
Thank
we can
you.
put it on a future agenda if we want to talk about it, so, but thank you. But there's meetings tomorrow and Wednesday that you can go to and talk about some of your issues. So 7 o'clock tomorrow, there's a planning board meeting.
Okay.
And yeah, I was just going to say, just for anybody watching at home, the planning board and the ZBA are the appropriate jurisdiction for the discussion about citing the facility. It's a zoning decision. It's not a Board of Selectmen decision. So there wouldn't be any action that the Board of Selectmen could take as far as where to cite such a
Okay.
facility. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. We will move on then. A couple of announcements here. There is just one Board of Health opening, and that's it. That's
pretty good.
Announcements.
Impressive.
Yeah,
We
how about
filled a
that?
lot of positions, so thank you everybody for
It is
volunteering.
good news.
Yeah, usually
Very
this is
good
much
news.
longer.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
If I could, real quick, while we're talking about openings and board and committee openings, I know I only have her one day a week, but Annabella Batista is coming in on Fridays, and she's very diligently working to compile for your next meeting a list of the board and committee positions that need to be appointed or reappointed. Sometimes it's a little bit tough to get back all the information from the various boards and committees about whose terms are set to expire, but we hope to have a whole list for you to consider. There may be some decision at your next meeting to hold off on a couple of those and consider them at a future meeting, but we'll try to at least have the list organized. These are the positions that become vacant as of July 1st, and these are the people who are interested in them, and you can consider that.
Okay, perfect. Okay, the next item on the agenda is for Selectmen and Town Manager reports. Darcy, would you like to start tonight?
Sure. I did meet with Mary Beth Lawton just to introduce myself and get a feel for the Council on Aging, and I think I'll probably be meeting with the board members soon, getting an idea of how things are working and whatnot. I was not able to go to the patent opening ceremonies because I didn't get the time and location until Saturday night at about 5:20. So I apologize for anybody who was expecting the Board of Selectmen to show. I would have definitely made room in my calendar for that.
Right, that was a little last minute.
So,
appreciate it, but a little last minute.
yes. Other than that, I think
Okay.
that's about it.
All right, great.
Since we're talking about D-Day festivities, D-Day celebration, I'll just let everybody know at home and on the board, you have been formally invited to as well to Thursday night, which is actually the D-Day anniversary. At 7 p.m., there'll be a closing ceremonies for this week's celebrations out there. And it's really the other main item on the agenda. So if anybody wants to come out to see the homestead and help in the ceremony of ending the celebration week, Deb Lannon and the folks that have been working with her at PHI and the Wenham Museum have put a lot of work into the event. They had over 100 people show up at Saturday's event.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was
Yeah,
going
it
to ask you.
was
Good.
probably, may have been, I wasn't there, but I was told it might have been between 100 and 150.
Okay.
And they are actually having a screening of the film tonight at 7:30, The Longest Day, which is at the Community House tonight at 7:30. So for those of you at home that don't want to watch this entire meeting, after my town manager report, go to the Community House and see The Longest Day.
This meeting are the Bruins, right?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Not really.
Bill, how about you?
So we just talked about the planning board meeting to continue the public hearing on the Patton Grove facility is going to be tomorrow at 7 o'clock. And then school committee meeting is going to be Wednesday at 7 o'clock. So it's going to be a busy week for meetings. So not a lot to report, but a lot going on with the transition at the school to a new temp and a new superintendent, and then obviously the Grove facility. There's also a zoning board meeting as well tomorrow at 7. So, I mean, on Wednesday at 7, so it'll be busy week with meetings.
Got it. Sean, how about you?
Just a few things. The rec department would like to announce that the pool is open this Saturday, June 8th. And they'll be open from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And from 12 to 3. A&B Burgers will be on site selling burgers and dogs for patrons, cash only. And then a couple other pool-related items. This year they'll be open on July 4th, as well as through Labor Day weekend this year. And they'll also be selling prepackaged Richie's slush beginning mid-June. And they've added a couple of inflatable water play items this year, which will be put out during select times, and the schedule will be released weekly. And then also some kind of brief CPC news. Senator Tarr has put some stuff forward in the budget to help kind of cover some of the shortfall that we've had in the last couple of years. Hopefully that will stay in the budget. Will be determined as it goes through the process. And then also at our last meeting, I believe, maybe I brought it up, but the CPC would like a joint meeting as part of their annual hearing. And so in order for them to do that, I talked to Dor a little bit today, and he suggested July 3rd meeting would give them enough time to...
July 1st.
Or July 1st, sorry. July 1st meeting would give them enough time to advertise for the hearing.
Okay.
So if that's all right with you, Mr. Chair,
Yeah, sure.
we'll go on that track.
Makes
And
sense.
usually, I think last time we did it as a joint meeting, it was maybe 40 minutes or so of the meeting, or even less. If you remember last time, it was pretty quick. They just give us a brief overview and talk about outstanding projects, and people are welcome to come and talk to any projects they think are anticipated.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you. The only thing I wanted to add tonight, other than I believe there's a town hall building committee that I missed this past Wednesday, but they may be meeting again this upcoming Wednesday. They're working hard. Deadlines are coming up, and there is a survey out there for some input from residents about the town hall and the future of it. So if you could go, I believe that's on the town website.
Yep.
You can find that survey.
You can get hard copies, I think, here in Town Hall and at the Council on Aging. And the
That's right. Most importantly, though, I wanted to take a minute to recognize Greg McKenna and the American Legion Post for Memorial Day activities that I tell you are, doing this now for 9 years are some of the most awe-inspiring, and it's an honor to be a part of. Not only do they put together a breakfast for all the veterans on the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend, which this year was pretty much standing room only. They had really great turnout, and Joe, thank you for being there. And had a nice guest speaker. And then, of course, the next day is the parade. And talk about small-town America, that's what this is all about. And when you stand in that cemetery and you see these veterans and you remember and you memorialize the people that have gone before us fighting for the freedoms, and you see that church in the background with all the American flags, it's pretty spectacular. So I want to, again, just thank Greg McKenna and the American Legion. Okay, for the consent agenda items, before we start, there is someone here tonight, Christina is here, who is being recommended to be appointed to the Finance and Advisory Committee tonight by the town moderator, Bill Bowler. She's kind enough to be here tonight to introduce herself, so before we get to the consent agenda, if it's all right with everybody, she'd like to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Christina Schenk-Hargrove. I'm a resident of Hamilton for the past 15 years on Home Street. I've been looking for a way to get more involved in town activities, and honestly, I just really want to give back to the town and really be a part of it and be involved, especially now that my kids are teenagers and the school sort of kids' activities are winding down a little bit. So I feel honored to have been asked to be on the Financial and Advisory Committee, and I would ask for your approval.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, why don't we move on? I'll list out the consent agenda items. If there are any things that anybody would like to hold, just let me know. So the consent agenda item is to approve the minutes from the Joint Board of Selectmen and Finance and Advisory Committee meeting on February 20th, 2019. Approve the minutes from the Board of Selectmen regular meeting on April 29th, 2019. Approve minutes from the Board of Selectmen regular meeting on May 6, 2019. Appoint Peter Swindle as a backup building inspector for a one-year term, which would bring it through April 2020. Approve the 9th annual Coast to the Cure bike ride to benefit neurofibromatosis Northeast. Did I say that all right? Coast to the Cure takes place on Saturday, September 14th, 2019. Approve and recommend Christina Schenk-Hargrove for appointment to the Finance and Advisory Committee by Town Moderator Bill Bowler. Improved increased spending cap for Recreation Revolving Fund in current fiscal year. Take a motion to approve the consent agenda item.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Terrific. Thank you. All right.
Can I just ask for a little bit of, real quick, I didn't have it on the agenda, but at the last meeting, you'll remember that you had approved the use of Patton Park for the Cardboard City event in August.
Yes. Yeah.
I've had that group contact us and ask for permission to hang the banner advertising it on.
Oh, yes,
and
yeah, I got a call about that, so I forgot to follow up.
I know it wasn't on the agenda, but you've already approved the event, so it's really just a matter of formalizing the ability for them to advertise it. If you wouldn't mind indulging me in voting for that, so I can tell them yes.
I move that we approve a banner for, what's the?
Cardboard City?
Cardboard City in August.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Great, sure, of course. Okay. On to the agenda item. This is always a nice annual event, is the recognition of the police department intern. The presentation tonight by Chief Russ Stevens. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. This is a very special time for us at Hamilton Police Department. We do this once a year, and we take an intern from the high school, and we work with that intern, and they work with us, and we show them different parts of the community. And when I hear you, Mr. Chairman, talk about how special our community is, it's very special. I'm thankful for many things in this town, one of which is the support I get from the board, from our town manager, and the people. We've done this internship for several years now, and if you would indulge me just for a second, the lieutenant who oversees the program, who is he's like my right hand, and I'd be lost without him, he's always asked every intern to follow up and tell us what happened to you. So I'm going to read this letter to you, which we just got May 22nd, and it's from a young lady named Lydia Anderson, who was one of our interns 3 years ago. I'm not sure if, hi Lieutenant James, I'm not sure if you remember me, but I was an intern from the Hamilton-Wenham Regional High School in spring of 2016 and worked in the police and fire department for a couple of months. When I left, you told me to give you an update during college and after college, and I promised I would. I took a slightly different direction while at Simmons University and decided to major in political science with concentrations in economics and public policy. One of my favorite jobs while in college was with Girls Leap, where I taught young girls self-defense in Rosendale. We didn't teach the self-defense, yes. She did that on her own. I was also lucky enough to land a fellowship through the Barbara Lee Family Foundation and interned at the State House for a state rep this semester, and really enjoyed it. Government work gets hard and gets a bad rap, but it was really rewarding, and I was incredibly grateful for the opportunity. I was also fortunate enough to graduate a full year early, so last week I graduated magna cum laude from Simmons. I'm in the process of applying for the Peace Corps with hopes of becoming a Foreign Service officer with the U.S. State Department one day. I want to express my gratitude to you and the entire department for being so welcoming and teaching me so much in just a few short months. I have everyone at the Hamilton Wenham Regional High School and both the police and fire departments there to thank for my success. Please extend my thanks and gratitude to everyone in both departments. Best, Lydia Anderson.
That's great.
It's really nice.
So,
Yeah.
this is a wonderful town, and if anyone ever questions it, ride down the road on a Saturday and a nice day and see the fields being used and the pool being used and the parks being used. It's just a great town. I'm also very fortunate. We had with us this year a young gentleman named Jack Smith. And Jack Smith just graduated this past weekend, and Jack is looking at serving his country, and he is working with a recruiter now, and he plans on joining the Marines. I did encourage Jack, make sure while you're in the Marines that you get your college done, so when you get out, you can come join the police department. So before I go any further with this, I would like to call up Lieutenant James, who oversees the intern program. Lieutenant?
Thank you, Chief. Thank you. I look forward every year to having an intern from the high school, and they changed the program slightly this year. Typically, we would have a student for several months, but it'd be a couple days a week. It wouldn't be every day. This year, we had Jack every single day, the 5 weeks. The program starts much like any job would start. He has employee orientation. He's assigned a project. And then he'll do different assignments while he'll be working on his project, but have other assignments and duties. He'll do a ride-along once a week. He'll go to court. Jack's project was updating our electronic records management system. We currently have a lot of our old records still in file cards, and Jack went through a lot of the cards. He inputted the information into our new electronic management system, so records can be readily accessed by officers in any of the computer terminals, rather than go upstairs to the archive records and kind of thumb through it. He did a great job with it. Some of the information had to be weeded out. He did a really good job with everything. Weekly ride-alongs, and Jack, he seemed to like to do it in the evening. I think it was a little busier in the evenings, but that's what he asked for. And finally, he ended with an exit interview. And he's a pretty quiet guy, but in the exit interview, he did speak a little more, but it was all good. It was all good.
So Jack, if you would come up here, please. Okay. This is from the Town of Hamilton, Massachusetts Police Department, presented to Hamilton Police Intern Jack T. Smith in appreciation of your dedicated service from April 8th, 2018 through May 15th, 19 through May 15th, 2019 as a Hamilton Police Intern. Thank you for your outstanding service and best wishes on all future endeavors. Presented this 3rd day of June, 2019. Signed by myself and Lieutenant. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jack.
Could we just get a picture
Congratulations.
with the board before
Yes,
we
of
leave?
course.
Guys can stand there.
Yeah.
Please there.
Congratulations, Jack. Yeah, you're welcome. You in Giles' class? Yeah.
Town manager, please.
You didn't ask me at first. I'm not assuming anything. I don't make assumptions like that.
And we expect to hear your progress, too. That's later.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, folks. Have a nice
Oh, yeah.
Something you don't hear very often.
Nice. Okay, the next item tonight is a presentation by Gretel Clark about expanded cost composting.
I met with Gretel a few weeks ago and sort of discussed some of the challenges that we're having with, as tipping fees go up and our trash goes up and it's going to cost us more and tax goes, so what are the ways we can maybe solve some of that stuff, in addition to doing other things. I think there's 3 or 4 things we might need to attack, but it's very interesting to hear what she had to say about our compost and sort of the metrics and the data points behind it. And also, I did also take a tour of the brick and tarn facility this week as well, too. So I got an input of some insight on how they're doing things over there and how they can help us out, so.
Isn't that impressive?
Impressive, yeah. So they welcome anybody at any time to go over there, and they'd love to give you a tour of their facility. So they're very proud of what they do, and they give us a lot of free things. You can drop off any grass clippings, leaf clippings. You can drop off any sticks, twigs, branches, whatever you want. So they offer a lot to the community. So, but anyways, I'll let you go and give your sort of report, and I'll add in what I can.
Right. I'm not sure that the title expanded composting, we meant to have it that way. We'd really like to go back to what we were composting before we lost our every other week program. So we're thinking small right now, but eventually we'd like to ask you to think big too. When we came before this body, 6-7 months ago, to show the effect of our town having had our every other week solid waste program taken away, we show you graphs, and I'll just flash a few up here. I'm not going to drown you with statistics because we don't have them all yet, but here's a nice one to show you what's happened to our solid waste. This is when we were doing the composting and every other week, and then of course the trash went up by a significant amount. It was at least 21%, maybe more, depending on which year we're talking about. Then, of course, our composting rate went in the opposite direction. We went from 15% down to 7%. So it's less than half what it was when we had the EOW, or the every other week program. The previous board, since you're not all the same, but the previous board asked us to go back and see what we could do about getting more residents to reduce their trash and increase their composting as it had been under the Every Other Week program. And I'm going to read you a list of all the things we've done since we were asked to go back and basically re-educate the town. We participated in the Casella audit. As you know, there was an audit of our recycle program. It was great fun. Ann and I went down and we saw how they determined how contaminated our recyclables are. And in fact, we discovered that we probably are better than most towns. However, we've also discovered that there are some real problems with the way Casella charges us for our unrecyclable trash. But that's another whole story, and I'm not going to go into that right now. We had a styrofoam event, if you recall. It was just after Christmas. Mm-hmm. All of us just about froze. It was at the Winthrop School. We took in a good roll-off worth of, or a half a roll-off, I think, worth of styrofoam, and carted it all up to, thanks to the DPW, they loaned us two truck drivers plus my own truck, and we took it to Newburyport, they were willing to process that and send it to the company that indeed does recycle the styrofoam. We in fact, this year are negotiating with Beverly to do a joint styrofoam event so that we might get a little more higher participation, and of course get what they call RDP points for it. These are funds that the town wins if we do certain things related to cutting down on trash. We of course wrote articles to the Chronicle. We mailed out a postcard that wasn't a 5x8. I'm sure you have your own, a nice hard paper that you could tack right over where you trash, so that you know very easily you could refer to that to review what you can and cannot compost and what you can and cannot recycle. After that, about 2 months later, we sent a letter to every single household in town. It went out on town the town letterhead, and it went into all the details of our trash program, just so that we could be sure we covered everything. Everyone knew where they could take what on what day to cut down on their own trash. We used the electronic notice board several times, thanks to the cooperation of the town itself, alerting people, for example, around Halloween that they need to compost their pumpkins, not trash them, which we found was done in a number of places, and that kind of information. We also, of course, probably the most interesting part of this was work with the haulers. Anne's an early riser, and she was the leader of this, getting up at something like 6 in the morning to meet the haulers down where they gather. Where is it they gather? In front of the public safety building, and just sort of find out about what their routine is for the day and review what our needs were. And then, of course, she learned a lot about what was on their minds, but we learned a lot about how hard it was to put into their minds not picking up non-compliant recyclables. It was a really eye-opening experience to find that our hauler is not, in fact, helping us do a good job. And again, another story, another problem that we're working on, but it certainly opened our eyes to this. However, we did get a higher level of compliance. I had a member of the finance committee tell me that he was riding down Larch Row on Saturday. Of course, that's in Wynnum. And he said, you wouldn't believe the number of non-compliant bins that were out. You won't see as many now because of the work we've been doing with Casella. We worked in collaboration with the library to establish a lending library of things so people can go and rent tools, equipment, games, a whole list of useful things. We also, of course, I get the pleasure of doing this follow-up when people call up to complain to the DPW. I've told them, don't sit there and waste your time talking to them. Send them to me, and I will converse. And I've made lots of friends that way, people who didn't want to do things, but we've brought them around. I've found it's just, if you just talk to people when they're upset about their trash, it's 90% of the problem. And we've had enormous luck with this one-on-one contact. Of course, in a big city or town, you couldn't do that. But as you recall, when we started the original composting program, we had what we called a trash hotline. That was my phone number. So I'm well experienced in handling irate residents. Let's see, what else did we do? We continued working on the town's website that it refers to trash. I will tell you quite confidentially, it was a mess. It was not very user-friendly. I'm being very frank. We were lucky enough to have one of our members be a professional website creator, and he, after something like a year, got permission to have access to the town's website, and he rewrote the entire portion of the website that talks about trash and how to trash and what the rules are of the town. We're losing him to Ipswich, unfortunately, but at least he's done the job. And he and another member of our community created a Facebook website on Hamilton Wenham Waste Reduction Committee. I can't believe this. We've got our own little app, and of course we can sit and scream at each other on that. But at least it's there, and we've had a lot of people asking good questions, and it's given us the opportunity to clarify what does or doesn't go into your trash bin or your compost bin or your recycle bin. Let's see. We sponsored a table at the fall town meeting with a poster about you can and cannot. Of course, you probably saw us also at the elections handing out compostable bags. We hoped that if we had lots of compostable bags to give people who were hesitant, this would show them that you can just line your countertop bin. You'd never even have to touch that food that you were just eating before you get it into your green bin. And I think we got a few more adherents to the program that way. Let's see, we also, interestingly enough, when we were doing our mailing and trying to figure out how many letters needed to go out, we discovered that the way in which our town counts the residents in the town isn't really very accurate. And having a mind like Ann's, she sat down with our various employees here at the town hall and helped Tim come up with a much more accurate way of counting who lives, how many people live in this town. In other words, how many pieces of mail do we have to have, for example, to go out? We also, in fact, discovered that one of the reasons I think that composting decreased was we've had a number of new residents come to town that we need to follow up on. So we now have a bi-monthly session where one of our members goes into the MLS listings of all the new people who come to town. She was a realtor, and she sends a letter, a Let's Talk Trash letter, to these new people and lets them know exactly what they need to know. Some people who come don't even realize they have a right to a green bin to put it out, or they have a right for an official town trash bag. So let's see, what else? Oh, and of course, finally, I have to say a few things of pride. As you know, we were written up in the Boston Globe. See if I have a copy of it. I don't know if any of you saw this. This was in April. It was the first page of the address section, and they called it Trash Talk. There it is. And guess what? Hamilton is the town that is quoted and is a model that is presented for the rest of whoever else reads the Boston Globe. We were pretty excited about that. Just in case I have to read something. Something else which I discovered, do you guys get this?
I saw you in
Did
there.
you see it?
Mhm.
Yeah, this is everyone who's a select board member ought to have it. It's the Mass Municipal Association. And this issue, the spring issue, is dedicated to the issues of trash. We, in fact, are, as you probably know, in a crisis. And so a lot of articles are being written about what towns are doing about it. However, there's one article here, if I can just find it, that talks about the town that has the most enviable program. Guess who? Of course, Hamilton gets praised along with us, but you and I know there's Wenham that there's Hamilton that led the way. Wenham is on here. Hamilton and Wenham are leaders in curbside composting, and they're talking about what every town manager, I don't know, Joe, you could probably reinforce what I'm going to say, wish that they had a composter in town, wish that everyone in town had a bin, and wish they had a contract like ours where we have a composter picking up our bins and taking it to the composter. We're the only town in the Commonwealth with that, which is really rather amazing when you think of it.
And how many houses compost do you think right now?
So we are down to, 2 months ago it was 7%, and then I think it was 8%.
So the leaders in the state. No.
Oh,
Percentage of
that's
households.
true, yes.
Percentage of households. It should be about 25% of our waste should be compostable, is that what you think?
That's what is estimated. If everybody composted, 25% of what was their trash would be going into the compost.
We reduce our trash by 18% if we composted to our full building, is what you're estimating.
Absolutely. It could be even more than that.
When I drive around, I mean, I'm not scientific, but I see maybe only half the houses have green cans out on a trash day, but I don't know if we've done the count to see what it actually is.
Casella did that count for us over a year ago, and I think we were in the low 30s.
That's right, it was 33.
High 20s.
Yeah, 27 for Wenham and 33 for Hamilton.
Yeah, I mean, we have this great asset, and we're not using it.
Yeah.
It's costing us all money.
And here we've bought all the equipment, got the contract, have the composter. It's crazy, it's crazy. Let me see if I've just covered everything I intended to say. Actually, here we are. Hamilton, in fact, is in, let's see if I can just go back. Although recycling continued to float along at just about the same rate, what it was before the every other week and afterward, our argument then and now is that we should either go back to the every other week, offering residents free trash pickup every other week, or we can go to a full pay-as-you-throw program, as have 44%, get this, 44% of the other cities and towns already do. They have their residents pay fully for all the trash that they put out. 160 towns in all. I went online and counted them. I found that 9 of them actually charge more than we do for their bags. Let's see, 9, they range from $3 to $5 a bag. We ask $2.50 a bag. So it's even more draconian than what we do. It's fair, of course, instead of asking everyone's taxes to pay for trash costs, those who use the surface most, those who refuse to compost and put out the most trash should pay for it. And you can do this through charging for the bags. Mm-hmm. Now, we allow one free barrel, and in fact, when we first conceived of this, we knew that people who really did compost or did recycle didn't need to use more than one bin every other week. Some people every third week. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of you who could attest to that. There's no reason for us allowing it every single week. Did you want to say something?
I can attest that. I mean, we have a family of 4, and composted, and we did not have more than one trash can every 2 weeks and never bought a blue bag in a year. So
Yeah.
it can be done.
Yep.
So.
I have 3 families in my compound, and we've never bought a blue bag. Anyway, Hamilton, in fact, is in a unique position in this state. It's already supplied every resident with these pieces of equipment. I think really the bottom line that I'd like to make here is the committee thinks that the most compelling argument to promote composting in town is an environmental one. And I'm just going to read you a few sentences to say this. We are not going to try to convince you on a financial basis as to why we have to do it, although it certainly would help. It would bring the costs down. However, when food waste gets composted, whether in a backyard, bin, or a farm-scale facility, I'm quoting from this article that was in the Boston Globe, it releases carbon dioxide as bacteria and fungi consume the carbon and break down the organic matter. That may not sound ideal, but when organic waste ends up inside a landfill, there's no oxygen. It releases methane instead of a far more potent greenhouse gas that traps about 30 times more atmospheric heat than carbon dioxide. If you don't bury those food scraps in the landfill, this is a director of Zero Waste at the Conservation Law Foundation, she says, they don't produce methane. It's a very avoidable problem. What's more, composting those food scraps can actually sequester carbon, locking it into the ground. So the committee is going to take the environmental side of all of this, in addition to what's fair and who ought to pay for the trash. I think I'll stop there and let you ask any questions you might have.
I mean, I think the other thing you didn't mention is that The other thing too is that at Green Meadows, when you compost, they show you where it comes in, and they show you where it goes out in soil. It's a year from when your food compost truck drops off the compost to when it leaves there in soil to someone's garden is a year. A garbage bag goes into a landfill, it's 30 years before it breaks, 30, 50, 100 years before it breaks down.
Yeah,
So,
if at all.
Right.
Plastic is forever.
so it's a big difference, but I think financially is important though, too. I think we're here because our job here is to be fiscally responsible to the town and spend our taxpayers' money wisely, and if we can save money by doing something that's also good for the environment, it seems to be a win-win, so we
Well-
got to figure out the right way to do it.
And you'll be lauded statewide. Everybody's watching us. They
Yes.
want to see where we're going to go now because we are the model town.
Gretel, I was
Please.
just going to quickly ask you, were you aware that Beverly is going to be charging their residents for composting? And we're so lucky to have it for free.
Yes, in fact, I was going to mention that where there is composting, the individual families usually have to pay the composter, the hauler. They don't get that service free. They pay somebody to take away their compost. Yeah, you're right.
And I have a few numbers for you. Gretel said that the trash has been increasing over the years here in Hamilton, and it's continuing to increase. So I took a look at this fiscal year, FY19, how it compared with last year in terms of the increase in solid waste. And we don't yet have the numbers in for the last 2 months of this fiscal year, so I had to approximate based on the average for the prior months. But we're on track now to have an 8% increase in our solid waste. So we're looking at our solid waste every year going up. And when we look at what we call the diversion rate. And the diversion rate is how much of our total trash stream goes someplace else, whether it's recycling or composting or the textile program. You look at the diversion rate. In 2013, we had a 52% diversion rate. That's how much of our total stream went elsewhere. And we're going down with that. We're down at 48%. Other cities and towns have programs, zero waste programs. They have reduction programs where they're trying to increase that number. And we're headed in the wrong direction right now as a town, where our diversion rate is going down. And I know I've mentioned this before, but the highest diversion rate in the country is San Francisco. They have an 80% diversion rate. They have mandatory composting. They have all kinds of other programs. They've had mandatory composting for 10 years. And we're not asking for that, but it's out there. Other municipalities, like San Francisco, a huge city, can do it. They're at an 80% diversion rate. You also look at what we're paying for solid waste right now to dispose of it. Right now, our solid waste goes to Wheelabrator. It's an incinerator up in North Andover. They charge us a per ton fee to burn it. It's what you call the tipping fee. Our contract with Wheelabrator, it's a 5-year contract. We have 1 more year on our contract. When we signed that contract, we had a fixed price per year. So currently this year, we're paying a tipping fee of, when you round it out, $68 a ton. The city of Boston just went out. They're renewing their 5-year contract now. They went out to bid. Wheelabrator gave them an $80 bid. That was the low bid. Covanta came in at $93 a ton, and Republic Service came in at $108 a ton. So in another year, we're going to be going out to bid. Not only is our volume of trash, solid waste, increasing, but the costs are going to be increasing. And while it may not be great financially in terms of the impact, I think the town should look at ways of getting that headed in a different direction, getting our volume down. I don't know what we're going to be able to do about cost. Again, the $80 a ton for tipping fee was the low bid by Wheelabrator, and that's where we're currently sending our trash. I don't know what will happen in a year when we put our contract out to bid, but it seems to me we need to get control of this somehow. One of the ways, as Gretel was talking about, is going back to every other week, which will hopefully cause our composting to increase, our trash, solid waste to decrease. And another issue is putting some of these increased costs into the cost of the blue bags, so that the people who are really generating the excess trash are the ones who are paying the increased costs over time. So those are the numbers that I had. And I think...
Do you have the cost for the other tipping fees for what we're paying for composting or recycling?
I do, and I have a chart with all of that in it. We pay $45 right now to tip our organics at Brick Ends, and Peter Britton has indicated that that will stay the same for the upcoming fiscal year. I also have our tipping fee for recyclables. 2 years ago, we got paid money for our recycling. Now we received money. Now we have to pay money. The first month after China blocked the U.S. from sending contaminated recycling there, it jumped. It went up to $44 that we had to pay. The next month it was $70, then it went up to $80. The high point that we had to pay was last June. We had to pay almost $90 a ton to Casella to get rid of our recycling. Since that high point, it's come down a little bit. In April, we paid $69 a ton to get rid of our recycling. It will still be less.
Because we also pay a fine. What do you call it? You pay a fine for people who put the wrong stuff in recycling on top of that, correct?
We're at a very good place in terms of our contamination. Other cities are paying fines. Some other cities who are going out when their contracts expire and they're going out to rebid their recycling contracts. The cities that have high contamination rates are really getting hit with high costs. So, for example, the city of Boston also had to go out to renew their 5-year recycling contract. And what we have to pay per ton for recycling is a formula. It's the processing fee, what it costs Casella to process and sort and bundle, and less what they get from the end product on the open market. Right now, under our Casella contract, our processing fee is $77. City of Boston, when they went out to rebid, the low bid was $115 per ton for processing fee. So cities and towns who have high contamination rates, when they renew their contracts, are paying a lot more for their recycling than we're paying today. Also, if you look at what we're paying today for recyclables, it's much less than the $80 fee that we're looking at perhaps a year from now to pay to get rid of our trash. So the Waste Reduction Committee has looked at it. Some towns have abandoned their recycling. We don't think, looking forward, that that's an appropriate direction for Hamilton to go. We think in another year or two, the recycling will have sorted out a little bit. Hopefully those costs will continue to go down, and we fully expect the solid waste disposal fees to continue going up.
I saw a copy of an invoice or a bill, and I thought they were charging thousands of dollars per bill for the contaminants, whatever you called it. So there is opportunity to save costs by educating more on the recycling, right? Because like the wax-covered cartons are going into recycling still, and that's causing contaminants, right? So there is an opportunity for us to save money by less contaminants or not?
The contract is unclear.
Okay.
We have encouraged the DPW director to go back to Casella to try to lower our rate because we have such a low contamination rate. Casella, as of last fall, was charging us a contamination rate of 16%. We know we're at 6%, and we want them to build that into their rate structure. So I think that's a discussion to be had with Casella.
That's why they take the trash cans that have things in them, because they get to charge 16% to do it. So.
Right, because the haulers are not rejecting it. I agree.
Chairman, I think we should have a discussion amongst ourselves before we public comments, my opinion.
I just have a very quick thing. Is it okay?
I think once you open it up, Jeff, we're going to be...
All right. If you don't mind, we'll have a second. We'll discuss among ourselves, and we'd welcome what you have to say.
Right now, or?
In a minute, after we finish discussing it as a board.
Okay, sure.
If you don't mind, thank you. Sure, go ahead, Bill.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, I think it's an interesting discussion, because, I mean, we're looking at it from different angles, but it's, you know, is it environmental or is it cost? I mean, for me, it's, we offer service in town, and by people not using the service, it's costing everybody else more money. So there's opportunities for everybody to get rid of their trash however they want to, but we all shouldn't be paying the same amount to be doing it different ways.
Yeah, like
So-
when we have our water bills come out, we know that the heaviest users pay the most.
Right.
Their rates are higher, and we reward people who are more conservative with the water. Maybe that's the model.
There's not even a reward, but if your use fee or whatever. So, I mean, I made a note when I was grade, sort of a four-prong attack, and I think they kind of overlap, but I think educate's important. Educate people, and they've done a great job at it, but we now have to do a good job of it, and all their boards do. It's important. The every other week thing, I don't know what the solution is, but just, you know, when we were part of it a few years ago, we voted in, people said, well, we won't recycle less, we won't compost less, and it's not going to cost us more money to do it, so we'll do it. Because I think at the time when we renegotiated it was, but now we've proven with the stats that people did compost less and they did throw out more stuff. So we have the data points to prove it. Mandatory compost, I don't know what that means. I don't know how you enforce it, but it's silly for people not to do it. We give them the services, it's free. We give them the green buckets, and it goes right into their community. You watch it, you can go there and get your compost, get your soil. And the last thing was, the recycle. I thought that our commingle, our contaminant fee was higher, but I thought recycling would be important to sort of talk about that too, but maybe that's sort of a lower on the totem pole if we think maybe it might be a couple of years before we see what happens with recycling, but I think we need to come up with some sort of policy that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's, like you said, there's a bunch of different kind of pronged approaches we can take. You know, one is just, in Great I've had this conversation before, is just as simple, the town doesn't do trash anymore and you pay as you throw. You know, the town has the hauler or whatever, and every individual pays per bag they put out there, and whoever wants to put out 10 bags can put out 10 bags because they're going to pay for 10 bags. The mandatory compost thing, I think, is tricky. I mean, in an ideal situation, everyone would compost and it wouldn't be an issue, but then you've got a lot of people that either they don't want to compost or they're already composting in their own gardens and things like that, and I think that would be kind of one of the tricky gray areas. That if someone doesn't put a bin out, you can't really find them if they're composting it in their backyard. Right. You know, and then you're going to have more manpower and time to go check and prove that they're composting, and, you know, there's a lot more kind of man hours and cost involved in that. So there's some issues with that as well. I think the key is really education, and I would be in favor of going to the every other week trash pickup again. I think I was the only one on the board at the time that was against the every other week, or the every week pickup, because I said, we're going to have increased volume in trash. People are going to kind of get lazy. You know, that chicken dinner you had, I'll just throw it in the trash because it's going out tomorrow. You know, I think there's a lot of that going on. So I would be in favor of going back to that every other week, because like you said, and I'm in the same boat, I have a family of 4, and we put out 1 bag every other week in the trash can. So it's not an issue for me.
And people who want to throw out trash every week can. They just go by.
And people who want to throw out trash every week can.
The truck still goes by, they still pick it up, it just costs you $2.50.
Right.
So it costs you an extra $2.50 times 26 weeks, it costs you an extra $100 a year, and that's what you're paying to have your trash picked up every week, which seems like a reasonable use fee.
Right, and go ahead, Darcy.
I was just wondering, do you remember a few years ago, we used to separate everything, kept everything nice and clean? The glass was all rinsed out and kept in one,
Right,
and then we
before
had
we
the
did the
metal
single stream,
and the
right.
paper. Would that help? Would that assist in keeping the...
Sounds like recycling isn't quite figured itself out yet, because it's the China stop.
As the issue
Yeah,
with the
we've
glass
actually-
is one big one, right?
Right. We've actually talked to DEP and asked them that very question, because people in Hamilton are used to separating them out. Many of us continue to do so. It just makes it easier in the bins. They've said no, because they only have 1 truck. They just throw it all in the truck. It goes to a single stream facility. It's just all mixed in with everything else. So that would not result in any benefit to Hamilton. The issue about glass, when you look at how much Casella is able to sell the various recyclables for, their biggest cost is getting rid of the contamination. The second thing is glass. They actually have to pay to get rid of glass. In Massachusetts, or I think in New England, there was a single glass processing plant that shut down last year. all they're doing with glass now is they're grinding it up and they're putting it in asphalt. So everything else has a value. Casella can sell the plastics, it can sell the metal, the aluminum cans, the mixed paper. They have to pay a lot of money to get rid of glass and to get rid of the contamination. Those are the two biggest things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I give a second to
course.
chime in as well?
Of course.
So thank you to Gradle and Ann for all of your hard work and your insight into this. I'll agree with Gradle. I know that, for instance, the town administrator in Swampscott, where I live, is desperately looking for a way to be able to offer composting to the folks in town. We know that the things that get composted tend to actually weigh too. So it's not just a percentage of your trash is compostable material. It's the heavier stuff, right? So I'd like to recommend the board consider allowing me to appoint a task force that would include a member of the Waste Reduction Committee, a member of your board, and somebody else to kind of make a recommendation or ask the town meeting for an advisory vote. And the reason I'm advisory vote only, not a binding one, you're the policy-making board, you get to make the call. But at the same time, when you talk about changing behavior and trying to change the way the entire town thinks about how it disposes of trash, I think you might want to look a little bit more beyond yourselves than just the five of you.
No, I agree.
I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just making a recommendation. I think it might make it easier for all of us if we can get a task force to work together on kind of making a presentation to either the special town meeting or next year's annual town meeting about what our costs are, about what different methods are that could help us drive the costs down and be better trustees of the environment at the same time, in a way that encourages people and incentivizes composting and gets us all thinking about it in the same way, as opposed to just, as some people will take it, you foisting on us something that we don't want. You know, coming from my last town, the two things that people seem to think are their God-given rights in the state of Massachusetts are parking and trash. So rather than engage in a very ugly conversation about that, I think it's better if we work together to come up with a way to propose it to the town that the town meeting will support. It will give you guys some understanding of what the town as a whole would be willing to consider and support. And then you can make your policy decision from there.
So you say town...
Hopefully save us some money in the meantime,
Yeah.
because I think that
That's where
we're
it's gonna be.
in a lot of trouble if we keep doing trash the way we're doing trash.
I think so too, and to Ann's point, with we're going out to bid again here pretty soon, and that rate's not going to be what it was for sure.
Nope.
No way.
Or we have a contract for another year, but we have to start bidding, obviously, before the year's up, so.
Yeah, I mean, it'll only take a couple of months, but
Oh, that's it.
Tim's already been in my office saying, hey, we got to look at this. I'm like,
Okay.
yeah, I'm aware.
Okay.
So we agree with Ann, we have to look at it ahead of time. But let's have a little bit more input from the whole community.
Yeah.
Because it is the whole community that's going to manage it, and whatever you folks decide policy-wise, we'll implement, and then, it'll be me and my assistant and the treasurer collector and the tax, and the town clerk and the police department getting all the angry phone calls about why did you change this on us? So let's try to have a measured approach to making that change. But that's my opinion.
I think
Good
that's a
idea.
great suggestion.
Yeah.
I would be willing to make a motion if no one opposes. Unless
I think
we
should-
hear from the audience
I'd
and
like
then
to
we
hear from the
can.
audience first
Ask
before
you to have me appoint a committee, just do a task force. We don't need to do a whole big advertising.
Yeah.
I think we have some of the right people. We know who the right boards and
Yep.
committees are to ask.
Oh, I agree.
We'll get a representative from the community who maybe isn't into composting, so we can hear that side of the argument. And
Yep, no, I think that's
get
perfect.
everybody-
Get a lot of heads in the room that have varied opinions and find the best solution.
Okay.
You want to entertain some opinions, and I can make the motion afterwards? It's up to you, Mr.
No, if you
Chair.
want to make the motion, then we can have discussion.
Sure. I make a motion that we appoint the town manager to appoint a task force to look into our trash, compost, and recycling services.
Second.
All right, so further discussion, would love to hear from Emil. You could introduce yourself.
Great. Bob Curry, 713 Bay Road. When my kids were young, I composted in my backyard and grew vegetables organic way. And when work got in the way of doing that, which it took a lot of time, we couldn't compost anymore. It didn't make sense. And the anguish we both felt putting
Stuff in the trash.
putting stuff that came out of the ground into the trash was awful until Gradle came along. And Gradle, she didn't have to convince us. And right now, there's just the two of us in our house, and I weighed one of our compost bags, one of the 3-gallon compost bags. Used the kitchen scale in the kitchen, the bathroom scale in the kitchen, held the bag, and you know how to do that, right? And it weighed 9 pounds. And then I did a few more, and they were between 9 and 10 pounds each one. And we produce 3 of those bags a week. So, and our backs are starting to go, so we have to actually take the bags out of the bin and put them in the car, and then go out with the big green thing and put that out. So we produce 2/3 of a ton a year of compost. Just the two of us, and we work hard at it. And and if you assume there are 200 households, 2,000 households in Hamilton, if half of them did it, there'd be 648 tons of compost. And it makes us feel really good to do it. We take our trash barrel out every 2 weeks, sometimes every 3 weeks, and it doesn't weigh anything. What's in it is just, what's left over from recycling and composting. So, go composting. Right.
Thanks, Bob. That was very great and relatable, I think, to most people listening.
Thank you. Yes, if you could just introduce yourself and your address. Richard, yeah.
Richard.
Who are you?
Who am I? Oh, God, I don't know. Richard Bois, 40 Moynihan. First of all, want to thank Gradle and Andrew for providing me with the minutes of the most recent 2 meetings of the Waste Reduction Committee, one of which included Ann's doing, I think, yeoman work late yesterday or sometime yesterday, writing the minutes, and I was able to get them. They have not been reviewed yet by the committee members, but it's legal to request them, and they were able to provide me with that. 2 major things. First of all, in getting the minutes and seeing the agenda for today, I got very concerned, which is obvious, because I asked all of you to look at stuff that was on Facebook today, and as you know, there was quite a bit of discussion. And what the discussion boiled down to was no mandatory composting. A lot of people do their own composting, and they didn't really get into the issue of cost or going back to bi-weekly. But if this is any indication, no bi-weekly pickup, every week pickup. This is the year 2019. To go backwards to do something that antiquated would be not good for the town.
I think it's antiquated.
Because that's what you did in the old times. Bad choice of words, Bill. I often do that. But at any rate, therefore, I am asking that those 2 things are not on the table. No mandatory composting. What the Waste Reduction Committee is doing a very good job of is trying to educate. And I think they need to continue with that. And if what they're educating us with is not working, work at figuring out a different way to do the education. That's the way to go. All these other problems that are facing us are not really issues that individual town people can solve. That's not our capability. So I know it's going to be tough, but they're going to have to come up with something else. The list of things that they put in the agenda, and I don't think you folks have seen, or not the agenda, but the minutes, you folks haven't seen that yet. But there are a bunch of things here, and pretty much they're all what I'm going to call hostile to the community, because they're things like requiring individuals who want every week pickup to pay each year for a sticker that they would place in their trash. That's not a big deal, but it's a problem. And you can wait.
Be polite, Richard.
Huh?
I ask you to be polite.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I am. Changing to a full pay-as-you-go. That may be a necessity, but I consider that to be hostile. Returning to trash collection every other week with blue bag pickup only on the weeks that the barrel is picked up. Not good. None of these ideas were good ideas, and they were rightly rejected by the committee from what I understand. Most of what Gradle and Ann got upset with me because she thought I was misquoting or other things, and I'm trying to be polite, and I'm not denigrating Ann. None of that stuff was in the minutes that Gradle discussed. And I was told on Facebook, wait till you hear what Gradle has to say. Well, you know, the minutes are supposed to tell what she was going to say, and they didn't say that.
Really? Not necessarily. We have a meeting minutes, guidelines, and that does not.
I understand.
Yeah. So.
But, I'm just telling you where I'm coming from.
Right, but
okay. So with one last word, I think there is one more area of education that the committee can take up, the Waste Reduction Committee, and that is people doing their self-composting. Bob Curry said that he used to do it. I keep forgetting the proper name for it, but growing worms may be the way to go, and maybe they should have a class on teaching the rest of us how to grow worms so that we can use worms to do our composting for us. I'm talking about the red wigglers. Seems to be, there's a whole name for that, and it's an Italian word, and I can't think of the proper word, and whatever. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Interesting fun fact, though, at Brick Ends Farms, there are no worms.
Right,
150 degrees, bacteria, and the worms would die, so it's all with heat.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'd just like to say that I did draft minutes of our meeting. It was a meeting at which Gradle had said to the committee members, come in, let's talk about every single possibility, get creative. We're just going to list all the possibilities, talk about the pros and cons, and then we'll figure out where to go from there. It was to come up with a menu of possibilities. It was, many of them were not items that we had any intention of bringing to the Board of Selectmen, and we were not intending on proposing mandatory composting tonight. I think that's quite a leap for the community. I guess I feel like we don't need an advisory committee to go back to every other week. We know what it is. We did it for, I think, 2 years before we went back. I think it was when it switched from the Hiltz contract to the Casella contract, that's where we made the switch. But I think everyone in town knows what it is. For a period of time, we saw what the impact was when we went to every week. I'm not sure what the study or the advice is that we would then come back to the Board of Selectmen with. I think we all know what it is. There may be people who are for it, people who are against it, but I'm not sure we need to know more about it. The other thing is I think it's well within the authority of the Board of Selectmen to just make a decision tonight or whenever you want to go back to every other week if that's what you so choose. When we originally went to every other week, it was a vote of the Board of Selectmen. So, and I think with respect to the blue bag fee and what would be an appropriate charge for the blue bag fee going forward, the Waste Reduction Committee has already spoken to members of the Finance Committee, and we would like to work closely with them to figure out, and the DPW, to figure out the total cost of the trash program here in Hamilton. I don't know what that is today. I don't know what the revenue is we get from the bulky stickers. I don't know what the total revenue is we get from the blue bags. I mean, I think we need to put all that together, figure out the total cost of the trash program today, how we think it's going to increase in the future, and maybe some of the ways to charge for it. And that's, I think, what a group could study and look at, work with the Finance Committee on, and then come back to the Board
I
of
think
Selectmen.
you
That
described
would be
exactly
my
what we want the
proposal.
advisory committee to do. I mean, I think what we've learned in Hamilton, if we haven't learned anything, is that you need to build consensus in this town. So I think you have a committee, you guys are very close to it. You have us setting policy. I think we need a sort of a middle ground to sort of build consensus community. So I think it's an important step in this town to build consensus and have that sort of, and I think to do exactly what you just said, figure out, look at all the stuff. You looked at something very closely. We got to look at the fiscal. You said specifically you weren't looking at the fiscal. We want to look at the fiscal responsibility and how the towns will respond to it and how we can enforce it. So I think
Yeah, we need to analyze and then discover what our
so
options are.
I think it's a proper next step, and I think it's working alongside you guys to do it. So
All right, and I think,
And I must say, I do vermicomposting. I have worms in my basement. If people are not going to compost it, they're not going to have worms.
right, that'd be off the table, right.
I don't think our committee is going to do it.
And to Ann and Gradle and the rest of that committee's greatness, they've done a lot of the kind of work already for us, and they provide us with a lot of data, and they've done a lot of digging to find a lot of the data, and they've worked very hard at that. So I think if we kind of keep on that and we use the data that they have and the examples and their insight with the education and all their contacts with the state, with their contacts at the, what's her name, is it Sharon?
Sharon Kashida.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and use those kind of contacts and connections to help us with what we're trying to do here. I think, you know, it'll just help us all out and build consensus, and then we can make a decision on policy after that.
Jack Davis, 57 Lois Street. This is just a background question, either for Gradle and doesn't directly reach either the biweekly or composting, but it's relating to recycling. And my question is, the general assumption seems to be that recycling is a net positive environmentally in terms of greenhouse gases. Do we know, is that actually the case, you know, when you factor in transportation costs, emissions, and so forth? So is it a net positive in terms of greenhouse gases? And what's also the financial side? In other words, is it, are you saving money by recycling rather than just sending it all to a landfill?
You know, I don't know if I'm giving you a scientific answer, but until we have companies that can take the items that go into our recycle stream and repurpose them, recycling is adding more to the negative developments in our world. We originally, as you know, we could just give it to China, and China it was gone. It was out of sight, out of mind, and we didn't have to even pay for it. Now we pay more often than not more for recycling than for solid waste. It's kind of a topsy-turvy world, but it's an impermanent world because it's changing. It's constantly changing. The state is trying to find ways for us to recycle certain things. Ann and I have been going to regional DEP conferences to be up to date in the thinking on this. And of course, we communicate with our DEP coordinator probably twice a week. We're very deeply involved in this. We know all the people in the Casella hierarchy as to, who's doing what, and we know where to go when we're unhappy about what's happening. I'm a little concerned that you're creating a duplicate of what we have been, and it would take you a long time to get speed up. I certainly we're happy to give you data, but it's sort of a slap in the face. Let's create a new recycle committee, basically, or waste reduction committee.
I think you're misinterpreting the purpose of it. So we're just building consensus, not changing what you've done.
I'm certainly not trying to.
Well, it just feels like, because we sit on so much experience and data, et cetera. I don't know. I have very mixed feelings about it. Anyway, the recycling world is a mess. And until we find, for example, somebody who could take our paper and do something constructive with it. We used to get paid for our paper. Now we pay for it to be taken away because with single stream, it's destroyed. It's useless. It goes in with all the other gunk and basically is part of our contamination. So, you're asking a good question, but there's not a good answer.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, yes, Duke. Yes.
Duke Seaver, Essex Street. About a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, I heard the north end of the plant would close. They got a mountain of stuff up there, beautiful green grass. I wish they'd done some in my backyard. You could open a ski tow, it's so high along the Merrimack River. If that closes, the next recycle place, I understand, is going to be in the middle of the state, and if you think your cost is high now, it's going to be a lot worse.
Thank you, Duke.
I would like to ask the recycling committee
Sure.
question.
Sure.
Okay. Back to paper. I'm sort of learning that the wiggly worms, red wigglers, like paper. Okay. That might be, you know.
I'll give you some of mine, Richard.
Huh?
Mine I put in the basement.
Well, I'll be.
But in all seriousness, please read what you can recycle, because you can put a lot of paper in your compost. A lot of different types of paper go in your compost. So
Okay, I think.
please do that.
I would like to do that.
Yeah,
I can do that. I have time to do that
compost
kind of
guidelines.
stuff for
There's a lot
myself.
of different type of paper that can go in compost.
Okay, back to, I need to interject with a point of humor, if I may. But last year sometime, Ann offered on Facebook one of those big round barrel things that you can roll your compost around in to keep it going. And I took it, and I threw some stuff in there. I figured I'd use it as like a finisher. And I opened it up one day, and I saw this red mess on top of my compost in there. And I thought, what in the Sam Hill did Ann give me a plate full of spaghetti along with this thing? And it turned out it was those red wigglers. And then I found out later, I said, oh, this is great. I just love having worms in there. And what is it? What's the name of the word? What's the word? It begins with V. Vermiculture, which reminds me of vermicelli, which I think is a very thin spaghetti. Okay, and that's what I thought it was. So at any rate, I killed them all because I tumbled, and I read later that they don't like being tumbled. They don't like tumbling. I didn't know that.
They like to turn it themselves.
Huh?
They like to turn it over.
Yeah, right. So that's why I think you need some education. That's one area I think that is a room for growth and a partial solution to the problem.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you, Richard. All right,
So we made a motion.
Yeah, would you remind us of the motion?
So I made a motion to direct Joe to appoint a task force to look into our waste reduction / recycling, compost, trash, etc. services.
I'd say, I would prefer to say to help give us options to set a policy that informs us from what we learned from the committee. So it's this next step, not a redo.
It's not a redo. It's not starting from
Right,
scratch.
right.
It's going to hopefully have a member of your committee, if one of you will agree to work with, somebody from the finance department, somebody from the finance committee, maybe a member of the public who is not, bought into the idea of composting and recycling yet, so we can get that alternative worldview. And then I'll bring it back to you, and then you folks tell us what you want us to do. I'm not advocating a particular position.
So can we state that in a way that she can write it down? Or you got it.
You get that, Mary Alice? Okay.
I
Wordsmith it.
Second.
It was seconded, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all right.
And can I add just a general comment there? And Joe, I think you had mentioned this. We're looking at just a handful of months to turn it around.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I want to put a time limit on it, yeah.
Yeah,
Within the next
you know,
60, 90 days, yeah.
Yeah, I'd rather have us, in case you want to take it to town meeting, I don't know if you will or not, but in case you want to take it to town meeting, I think that we need to have it ready for your consideration for the warrant for an advisory vote by early August at the latest.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
be quick.
Before we move on, Gradle and Ann, I just wanted to thank you so much for all the work you do. I admire the hard work you put into this and the dedication and how committed you are, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda here is the interim town clerk operational plan and the presentation and the vote.
So this is just This has changed a little. I think I mentioned to you all, a couple of you before the meeting, we have lots of openings in town hall right now. We're choosing to fill one of the openings in our finance department by giving an opportunity to our clerk in the town clerk's office, Leticia Carrera Barrera. Leticia's going to move upstairs to the finance director's office in about 2 weeks, but she has agreed to help and train her replacement and help cover office hours.
Okay.
I've also spoken to, tried to get multiple town clerks, and I had intended to have a list of names for you, but I don't know, the retired town clerks are taking it easy right now. I have had several of them say they'll call me back with names, and so far the only name I have is Wilma, who was previously been here. The plan at this point, if you allow us to go forward with it, would be, because it's your appointment, so you'd have to make an appointment, to appoint a temporary part-time town clerk for up to about 24 hours a week at a rate of about $40 an hour.
Okay.
Wilma is willing to do that at least through our special town meeting and into November, at which point you'll have some more clarity based on the next question. You're going to consider whether or not we're going to need to continue the part-time temporary thing until April, or, you know, really in earnest start looking for how to transition to a full-time position. So that helps us in the short term, helps us line up other people to take over for Wilma after October. So.
Right, and we'll be fine, because that'll be new fiscal year for us as far as monies, right? So we'll have that.
We'll be able to utilize the salary line item, and even though the hourly rate is more than our current clerk gets, it'll be reduced hours.
Right.
So we'll be able to cover that. And again, having, our hope is to, Leticia accepted the offer to go upstairs to the finance department today, so we will advertise that opening and with the town hall union. We actually informally notified them today. We'll advertise that, and hopefully we'll be able to make a hire there in a matter of weeks too. So it'll only be into the beginning of July where we'd have some overlap.
Good news, bad news. You fill the position, now you got to fill another position. That's
No.
great news, though, for internal.
At the same
internal
time,
growth. It's great.
you never want to hold somebody back in
No, it's
one
great.
position just so that you don't,
Right.
create a problem for yourself. She's been a great worker. Everybody in town hall loves her. I can honestly say that as the news got around today that she'd been offered the position, I only heard positive feedback. Everybody's very happy for her. So I think that that's a good sign. Yes, it weakens us a little bit in the clerk's office, but I did let Wilma know about this, so she's still willing to come. So that's the good news.
And she knows town hall, which is nice.
Doesn't have town hall. She did make me promise that she'd have Leticia available to her to help her resettle into things. Like I said, we'll hire another clerk's position for that office.
Okay. So, Joe, do you need a vote on this, or what would you like
I
us
think
to
that
do?
you guys should vote to agree that effective July 1st, you'll appoint, I'd say go July 1st to November 1st at least, to appoint Wilma, and I do not remember her last name. Maybe we can take the vote at the next meeting. We'll do this, we'll put it on the meeting with her, well, I'll get her resume in front of you with her full
Yeah,
name.
I like
But
that.
if you're in favor
See
of
the
this
resume.
direction, we'll have a vote on the next agenda with
Okay.
her full name and resume, so that you guys can vote to appoint her as the interim temporary town clerk.
All right, I'll make a motion that we'll take this up at our next meeting, once we have Wilma's resume and a little more information, but we'll revisit it next time. So we'll table it for tonight, but move it to the next meeting.
Great.
All right.
Is that a motion?
Is that a motion?
Yeah, sure.
Second.
Second.
You basically just told me to do it, so
Yeah.
I'll do it. It's not a problem.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay,
Warrant article for...
yes, here we go. Kind of along the same lines, but segueing here to the warrant article for appointed or elected town clerk. And this is for discussion tonight.
I have really strong feelings about this. The town clerk is an elected position because she works for you. She works for the people. And she protects our elections, the ballots. Once you start taking away our choices of who runs the town, that means, and it becomes an appointed position, it can become politicized. So I remember back, I think in 2009, we had the same article come on the warrant, and it passed, but 6 months later, when Mimi Fanning was the town clerk, she came in and she educated everybody about how serious it is to make sure that you keep your elected officials, because that's your voice and they work for you. People who are elected don't work for anybody else except the people. And I think once you start taking away those checks and balances, it becomes a very slippery slope. So you have to be very aware what you're giving up when you reduce the position to an appointed one. It's really important.
I mean, I go back and forth with it, because, I mean, I think somebody gave the metaphor of like a rooster in a hen house, right? You got somebody in town hall who's not an employee of town hall, but an elected. So I sort of, that's kind of what you're saying, right? I sort of get that, but in the same breath, you look at the past elections, and it's barely been a, it's very rarely been a campaign in terms of, it's always been sort of one person runs, one person gets elected. So you don't kind of get that I mean, I get you. If you get a lot of people running for it, you get that robust, and you get sort of, I'm going to vote for this person and vote him in, but it's been more of an appointment.
Well, wouldn't you rather have the people have a voice rather than one person who's going to be their boss?
So I don't see as one person hiring him. I think that there's a process for
It's
hiring
also
anybody.
a check and balance. It works as a check and balance.
I just don't know if you get the best skill set, because you get people out there who might have the right skill set but don't want to campaign, don't want to go door to door, don't want to be in a debate, but maybe they have a better skill set to be a clerk. So I go both ways in terms of getting the right skill set, because we've seen what happens with the right and people who are properly trained and you miss things. So because anybody can run for it and be
Right.
there's no criteria. But if you're going to get a job, he gets 40 resumes and he goes through the 40 resumes.
Yes, but they're going to their allegiance will be for their boss. It won't be for the people.
Yeah, I mean, I go back and forth.
Yeah.
I mean,
I just want them to be very
Allison,
sure.
in the previous board, Allison gave us a nice report. It took about 60 to 90 days in another town. I wish I remember the name of it. I'll forward the report to you. But they'd gone through and done an assessment, and they had decided to go, from
Well,
elected
we did too, and then 6 months later, we went right back because we were educated about how important it was for checks and balances, for protecting our elections, protecting the ballot, and serving the people.
I mean, if you get the right person in there, it's not a. I agree with you. If you get the right person there, it's the right assessment. I just don't think that we get the talent pool here. We just don't have.
I mean, I guess I think it's difficult, like you said, Bill. And I see I'm thinking worst case scenario, right? We have someone who has no experience at all, and they pull papers. No one else pulls papers. They get in the office, and they never show up.
Oh, I haven't heard of that.
No, I'm giving a worst case scenario here. Okay, it could happen. We have no control over that. We pay them their salary as an elected official for 3 years.
And you can't get rid of them. There's no impeachment.
And you can't do anything
nothing
about it.
There's no removal from office.
Right. And then as far as like you're talking about protecting elections and stuff like that, which I agree with, that's a very important thing. You get someone in there with no experience, they're going to do just as much damage, if not more, than someone who's, you say, is politicizing it. But I think if you have someone with the proper training, they're going to do their job.
Well, I think proper training is available. The state offers lots and lots of courses and seminars and things like that. It's not rocket science. It's hard. It's hard work, especially during election season. And you'd be paying some of these people a lot of money for those 21-hour days. It just seems to me we've been through this before. I really hate reinventing the wheel. We went right back once we realized what was at stake.
Right, but I'm gonna use your own things against you here. Jiu-jitsu you, because at some point in a meeting just recently, you told myself and Bill that things change with different boards and different times, and you can revisit and undo what other people have done.
Well, this would actually have to go to the people. This vote would have to go to the people. We don't get that choice.
No.
We don't get that choice.
We can make a presentation to the town meeting floor, and I think that would be appropriate. I think we should at least look into it. I think both of our kind of point counterpoint. That's the only point it can change, right? But I think we need to let the people make that decision and do our due diligence to find the best data and examples and.
Generally, it's the larger representative democracies that go this route. We're a very small town. We're a direct democracy. That means each one of you is a legislator. When we come together at town meeting, each one of you votes your own mind. And if this does go to town meeting, we just have to make sure that everybody understands what's at stake.
Oh, I agree.
Generally, you see these appointed town clerks in places like Arlington, where they have 30,000 people. They have a town meeting form of government, but it's a representative town meeting form of government where they have electors. They'll have maybe 21 voters who represent the various neighborhoods. And I can see why they would need to have an appointed position there, but in these smaller towns like ours, I just have a hard time.
So just to clarify, this discussion is only about whether or not you want to have a town meeting article.
Right.
And then even if it passes town meeting, you'll have to have a general election ballot question
Yes.
on the issue. So it will always be decided by the voters of
Right,
Hamilton.
the people.
Even the voters who don't show up at town meeting will get an opportunity on the ballot to have their say as well.
Right.
What's the timing for deciding whether or not we want it to be on the warrant?
To be honest with you, I think if you're going to put this forward, you probably want to make a decision by the end of by the beginning of July.
1 month.
You get 2 meetings in July, the 1st and the 15th. I would think by the 15th, you'd need to make that decision to have a warrant article go forward, because you guys have put yourself on a good calendar to try to make sure that everybody gets to review the questions in advance, of the articles in advance, and the Finance Advisory Commission gets to.
And the only reason it's good timing is because of where we're at, is that we need a new town, right? There's a good, we thought we had another year and a half to talk about this. We talked about it a couple months ago. It's like, all right, let's start talking about it now. Let's see what the community wants to do.
And you don't want to wait.
Yeah.
You don't want to wait and have this be at the annual town meeting, because then you could be in a position where you'd have the annual town meeting considering this.
A week
And
after
a week later,
the
you'd
election.
be voting a new town clerk,
Right.
potentially. So if you're going to consider it, this is the
Yeah.
right time to consider it.
We can always move to make, take no action, right?
You can always at town meeting floor move to take no action.
So, I mean, I think we should continue to talk about it. Not that I'm in favor of creating more advisory committees, but we need to, maybe we should redistribute what Allison sent out, because it's actually a pretty good read, and then maybe we can talk about it in a couple weeks and decide if we think it's a decision we want to make amongst ourselves, if we want to get a larger group of people involved. But I think it's worth talking about. I think I go back and forth with what you're saying. I just look at worst case scenario, that if you get somebody in there, if you get somebody who's skilled and talented, but doesn't want to put themselves out there and be on a ballot and be in a debate, and so you're going to lose that person just because of that aspect of it, but not the skill set, so.
And you can always, to Darcy's point, you can always frame the appointment of that person to not necessarily come from the town manager or directly from the Board of Selectmen. You can put in place some other mechanism.
Yeah, we
for
could
making
hire,
that
the Board of Selectmen could hire the town clerk.
The town I came from had an appointed town clerk.
Whatever you-
that was
we hired
responsible
the-
to town
we hired the
council.
Board of
Yeah, that's where your checks and balances kind of fall off.
Yeah, but if you can figure out where you
important.
want it to come from.
It can
from
come
the
from a lot of different
perspective
sources,
of-
right?
Right. yeah.
Nominated from different places, but yeah, I go back and forth. I see both sides. I just see what happens when you don't have the skill set.
It's definitely worth looking into, and it's definitely worth putting a placeholder at least on the upcoming warrant, and doing some research on it.
Does anybody
Good.
have any public?
Yeah, anybody in the audience like to say anything? No, I don't know. I agree. Bill, I'm with you. I'm very torn, Darcy, with what you have to say, and with what you had to say, Bill. I think I did talk to someone that was on the government study committee, that when they decided which position should be elected and which should be appointed back in the day, this is what, 10, 15 years or so ago, that it made sense at that point in time to have the town clerk elected, because to your point, that was someone who was solely responsible to reporting to the electorate. And to, your point, I think kind of the philosophy was there's someone from the outside, from within, so if you want to be able to recognize and report problems going on in town hall.
But you weren't going to lose your job over. You could
Right,
independently report.
because you're independent reporting. So
That's
I'm-
called politicization of the position when that happens.
Yeah, a lot
Right,
of things, yeah.
right. So, but I think the timing does make sense. We might as well address it. So, yeah, good, okay.
People will have their say.
Yes, as they should.
So what do I take from this? Do you want to?
We're going to circulate that. Well, I think we should, I think without Rosemary here, I think it's important for her to be part of the discussion.
Yeah,
I think
that's
I'd like to put it back on the agenda in 2 weeks, and I'll circulate in the meantime Allison's study that she had sent. I thought it was interesting. study, what we take from it.
And have it back on the agenda.
Thank you.
And then you want it back on the agenda next, in 2 weeks?
In 2 weeks. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Okay, the next item up is the Capital Committee membership, some discussion, amendment.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we delay this to a future meeting. I think without Rosemary here for some discussion, I think we need to have some additional discussion with the existing board. And I think I would like to make a motion to, but however, I think the last time we didn't let people from the audience speak. We also talked about it. So although we make a motion that we continue our discussion, I'd like to give anybody who came to the meeting tonight the opportunity to at least speak for a minute or so on anything that relates to this comment. Otherwise, I'd like to make a motion that we delay this to a future meeting.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Would anyone in the...
The motion was to defer this?
Defer, yes. But if you want to make a comment since you're here?
Yeah, since you're here,
please.
Bob, if you
No.
want to stand up and make a comment, please do.
Some people are here for that.
I just find it strange. I watched the last meeting on cable, and what I saw was that the Board of Selectmen voted 3-2, chair included, to put Heather Ford in the final position. And what I understand is happening is that the proposition coming out, and that we might be discussing at the next meeting or the meeting after that, is that because the person who was endorsed strongly by Bill and Sean was not included in the Capital Committee, that the way around that is to increase the size of the Capital Committee from 5 to 7, so that that person could be accommodated and could be placed in this, plus somebody else. Who that is, I don't know. It's a strange way to run things. My experience as an organization person working with teams and so forth, a committee working on specific decisions and specific tasks, as it gets larger, it gets more unwieldy. 5 is the right number for the Capital Committee. And expanding it for the purpose of placing someone who probably mentored you guys on the committee doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I'll argue it today, and I'll argue it at the next meeting if I'm still moving around. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything to say? Yeah, I think for those of you watching at home, this has been a difficult conversation. I think this is an opportunity to kind of compromise and allow for some time to pass. I've heard from constituents that have very strong feelings in terms of it being a 7-member board versus a 5-member board. But I think what this allows to happen is for the committee itself to get up and running with the 5 members, and for it to allow for itself to make a recommendation if it thinks it should expand in the future to 7 or more or less. So I agree with you, Bob. I don't like kind of, pushing things down the road, if you will, but I think given the current environment, it makes the most sense to compromise. That's all. All right.
You want to take a vote? You had
Yes.
motion and a second? Yep, Darcy seconded.
Darcy,
Okay,
second, sorry, Darcy.
So, to postpone, basically, right?
correct.
Yep. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great, thank you.
I do want to say, I know Rosemary had sent a letter that she wanted read into the record.
I have not spoken on the issue because we said we're going to delay
Yeah.
it.
Okay, I just
Yeah.
didn't know if this
Yeah.
was the proper
No.
timing.
And I did talk to Rosemary right before this meeting, and I think, based on the conversation, she'd be okay with it not being read
Okay.
tonight. If that changes, then we can definitely get it in. Okay, back to trash. Proposal to pick up trash at private ways, discussion and a vote.
Can I start things up here?
Sure, Joe.
In the interest of brevity, I took a look back, once we had this back on the agenda, I took a look back, the last time the Board of Selectmen discussed this, with an eye towards making a decision, was on December 17th of 2018. And at that point, there were a lot of different things thrown around, but one of the ideas that was thrown out at the time was that perhaps it would be best for the Board of Selectmen to come up with a policy. And you had also kind of wanted to kind of drill down a little bit on what the cost would be. So I reaffirmed today the numbers that were thrown out at that meeting by me, but based on my conversation with Jack Manning. And on December 17th, we were saying that the Casella had said the cost of collection of that material would be $12.05 per home per month. And Jack said today it would be around $13. So he's in the same ballpark. That would be a cost of collection at Patton Ridge of, based on the new number, the $13 would be a cost of about $1,872 a year. The board also noted that there is one other condominiumized type of development, that being the Junction, that doesn't get trash collection, recycling, composting, and that their 22 units or so would wind up being about $3,400 a year. The idea of a policy to standardize how you would do that, I took a first swing at providing you a policy today. So it's new in your things. I would not recommend a vote on it today, but there's a draft policy in your packets that was handed as the second part of packets that I put out today. Review the mechanism for allowing the town to contract with the condominium associations to recover the cost of the collection. This is a first draft. We can make amendments to it. This does only look at the collection cost.
Mm-hmm.
I know Ann Giroux in an earlier email had noted that, you may want to consider
The compost
tipping and
and
composting and recycling and all that stuff. So Jack said that he could collect everything for that cost, so.
Yeah, it's kind of similar number than we had last time. I think it was for the Patton Ridge, it was about $1,700, so 18 is about the same ballpark.
So the idea would be that you guys could look at that, make some recommendations. We can send it through town council for recommendation on legal language, and have a first reading at a future meeting, and then a second meeting. And once it was a policy, it would be incumbent on myself as the town manager to negotiate an agreement with the
So
impact
count this as kind of
associations.
a first reading tonight then?
You
Or even
can.
just look at it?
I'd say look at it, and you can look at it as either, it's on the agenda as an item to be discussed and considered tonight, so you could look at that. I did not give you enough time.
Right.
So if you want to put it off one more meeting, I know that the Patton Ridge folks wouldn't be thrilled, I get that, but I also want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable what we're asking.
Well, can we paraphrase what we're thinking here?
by all means.
How many different, have we decided how many
There'd be two.
different these are?
Right now, it seems like we're just talking about the Patton Ridge and the Junction, right?
But by adopting a policy, if, for instance, in 2 years, Canterbury
We get
comes
another
forward
Canterbury,
and they want to
right.
do the same thing, you
We're in
have
the
a
same thing,
policy by
right.
which to standardize it.
Right.
So it's limited to only what we think is 3.
What
years right now.
we've all agreed to was that the smaller condominium associations of 2s and 3s, and I think one is 7, already get trash pickup.
Okay.
So we're not, we don't have to deal with them, they're already getting trash picked up. This is to address what is at least the perceived inequity between those that get and those who don't.
Right.
And understanding how we got there, but if you wanted to address that, this would be a mechanism to allow us to.
I like the mechanism, I like the idea, but I just always like to think of like the worst, what are we not seeing or missing in the verbiage, which is why I want to review it further, but what are the things that you could say, oh, you didn't write this line here, so now you have to, pick up my trash,
So
every
the
day.
policy in front of you gives you the authority to vote and tell me to work out an agreement with the impacted association. So the terms of that association would be within my duties to make sure I do, and then I would definitely be held responsible if I came up with it.
Who pays for the trash? Or who pays for the pickup? We get reimbursed? The town pays and get reimbursed?
Under the terms of this, what I'm proposing is that we would bill we would write an agreement with the association, and we'd bill them once a year for the estimated cost of picking up, and then they would pay us.
That's the only way they do it, because I'm thinking if it affects the taxes, then it's gotta go to town meeting to vote, right? Because we're increasing taxes, but we're getting reimbursed. It's the same step, it's not two different, that's all my only issues that.
Right.
You're not increasing the burden on the taxpayer, so.
No, but you're still increasing, revenue and you're increasing taxes. I just want to make sure that I'm not saying right or wrong or different, I just want to make sure we're thinking about it.
Right, I kind of know the angle you're talking about,
We
because
can
it's
ask
money
Donna to
coming
take a
in,
look.
right? It's a
We can
revenue
ask Donna
coming
to
in,
take
but it's an
Revenue, but we're always
offset.
increasing, so I don't know where.
But it's a revenue coming in under an agreement,
Yeah.
so that I believe
Right.
that we could structure the agreement with the help of town council in such a way that it would be directed toward the.
There's no way Casella can bill them, they won't, because the idea is they want to send out one bill, Casella.
Yeah, they bill us, whatever it is.
I mean, I don't have a problem with it. The concept is fine with me. I think the concept's fine. I just want to make sure that we have it written the right way. But
Right. And then Marissa's on board with the
Again,
accounting of it.
that's why,
right.
this is the first draft, you guys can take a look at it, make changes, come back, and have a first real reading at the next meeting, or you can move forward with the first reading tonight and just understand that the second reading might look dramatically different than what you have in front of you.
Yeah, no, and I like the kind of the last paragraph there, talking about the renewal, basically, first a 3-year initial term, and then 2 possible renewals, and then it will go to town meeting if there's more.
I think there needs to be, either money in escrow or a deposit. I mean, I'm taking a worst case scenario, right? Also, now they don't pay their bill to us, and so they have to pay in advance, not in arrears. There's some other mechanisms I'm sure they're willing to do,
I think that we could put into the contract.
Yeah.
Right, there's some other kind
That'd
of,
be
with their,
Agreement
their.
between the association and the town.
Right,
pay-
right,
pay.
some kind of HCA kind of a thing.
So you're getting into implementing, this is a policy.
Policy, right?
Implementing is.
No, but
what
the
I have
policy
to
should
do.
have some sort of financial, requirement, in it, so they know what happens if they don't pay, kind of thing. But I don't have a problem with, in my opinion, first read, I think makes sense. I just want to make sure it's dot the i's and cross the t's.
We'd appreciate a copy of it before you actually make it permanent for the Waste Reduction Committee.
If we put this,
Let me give you mine, hold on.
Yeah.
I don't need mine, I get it on my computer, so you can have mine.
this is trash, recycling, and compost?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, would you mind if I just read it too, and you can hand out
Sure.
copies, just so
Yeah,
folks
that'd
at
be
home
great,
know
Sean.
what we're talking about, they're not in the dark. It says, basically, the purpose of the proposed policy is to offer the Board of Selectmen and interested property owners of affected properties an opportunity to agree to a solution for the perceived inequity between private homeowners in the town of Hamilton and other private residential property owners regarding how trash, recycling, and composted materials are collected, transported, and disposed of between differing property types. Out of respect for the Hamilton Planning Board's public hearing and decision-making process, and recognizing the Hamilton Planning Board's attempts in recent zoning decisions to do its best to minimize the costs of new developments on the town budget, the Board of Selectmen proposes this policy that would allow the town to recapture the estimated costs of collection, transportation, and disposal of trash, recycling, and compost from previously uncovered residential properties, provided the condominium association, through its board of directors, signs an agreement with the town that would allow the town to bill the association for the cost of adding those homes to the town's trash contract, such as the condominium or homeowners association can be billed annually for the estimated costs of these services through the town's trash contracts. Such policy is to be implemented by the town manager and the departments under his supervision. After a contract agreement has been signed between the parties, said agreement shall outline the annual costs, deadline for payment by the association, and any other terms necessary to protect the town's interests. The town will administer this policy on an as-needed basis when approached by an affected condominium or homeowners association. Once an agreement has been reached, the town manager shall inform the Board of Selectmen of the implementation of the policy and the length of the term of agreement, provided that the agreement is for no longer than the initial 3-year term, with up to 2 possible renewals. Any contract proposed for longer than the 3-year term with 2 renewals will be referred to an annual town meeting for a vote.
Great, thank you.
I'm sure that town council will tell me what I did wrong with that, so. I'm not a lawyer and I don't pretend.
What was your thought process behind the last one?
You're only allowed by state law.
You go 3 years.
I'm only allowed to sign a 3-year contract
So-
on behalf of the town. and
Right. So if they wanted more, it'd have to go to the town meeting vote. So if they wanted a 5 or 10-year contract or something like that, it'd have to go to the town meeting vote.
What happens after the 7 years? They can't sign another 3-year contract. They have to go, and no matter what, after 7 years, it has to go to a town meeting vote.
That'd be after 9 years. At that point, you'd basically be wanting to make sure you had somebody look over it, make sure it was all being done properly, and the town was getting what it deserved out of it. And I mean, the town manager, whoever it is, me, somebody else in the future, is going to be held accountable for whether or not we're recapturing our actual costs for
Right.
providing service. So
Gotcha.
Joe, is this an à la carte thing, or is this all or nothing?
I would propose that we're only offering the same thing as what we provide to the rest of the town residents. If they want something different, they are free to go to the
What I
market.
mean is on a street, say, where Patton's Ridge is, say two people don't want to participate, would it be à la carte for them? Or would it be like everyone would have to buy in or nobody could buy in?
I believe
Because how would
my purpose in having us contract with the association is, that's up to the
Oh, it's the
association.
association.
to
Okay.
figure it out, yeah.
Okay.
Let them figure it out. We're going to say, there's 12 houses in your association, we're going to bill you this.
Yep.
And if two of their members want to divest from it, that's up to them to
Right,
figure it out.
they would figure
Pick
that
up the
out.
cost.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
I was
them
just
figure that
wanting
out,
to
yeah.
clear that up.
Okay. Yes.
I just wanted.
Introduce yourself,
Yeah,
if you
my
don't
name is
mind.
Barb Heslowitz, 3 Patton Ridge. I'm the president of the Patton Ridge Homeowners Association. Just wanted to address your question. It would be a board decision. It wouldn't be an individual homeowner decision, so that would not be a problem. And I did have the same question you had with respect to the, 3 years, 3 years, 3 years, and so.
More than that, we got to go to town meeting. So if I want to go to 5 years, I'm going to have to go to town meeting.
Well, no, I have no problem with the 3 years, but it sounded like it was, a 3 years is what you were saying then after that.
I've been part of organizations in the past that have contracted for 3 years with 2 renewals. And that I know we were able to get away with, so I'm not pushing for any more than that.
That's fine, yeah. And I just wanted to point out too, I think part of the issue I think that's taken so long to resolve this matter has been the question about the other issues facing the town with respect to snow plowing.
Right.
The road
Right,
acceptance
and we've
policy.
exchanged some emails with that because we were looking at a kind of a more
Right.
blanketed approach to plowed, unplowed, and trash pickup
Right.
and other things.
And I just wanted to let you know, for Patton Ridge specifically, we are not looking for road acceptance. That is not something we are interested in. And we are, even though we would be entitled to the snow plowing, we are not looking for that. In a condominium such as ours, especially since it's 55 plus, we have 2 neighbors, 2 of my neighbors are in their 90s. We certainly could not expect them, once the town plow came through, to then individually, clear their own driveway. So it makes sense for our development, as well as condominium associations in general, to contract them themselves. So again, that is not anything we're looking for. All we're looking for is trash. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm with her. I'm also with Patton Ridge. I just want to say, I want to thank you for even considering this
Just
because.
state your name, I'm sorry.
Mark Silver, 103 Patton Ridge. I just want to thank you because, just to remind you, the cost of us taking that on was 4.5 times what the city is paying, which is why we really wanted to come here because although a little paperwork for you guys, the cost isn't anything, and for us, it's a huge saving. So.
Compost?
Yeah, we're not going to do worms no matter what. I'll tell you that right now.
Mandatory compost?
No,
We're not gonna-
compost.
They won't do worms, but they might be considered.
No, and that's really all I wanted to say.
Again,
Thank you
farmers
very
are
much.
using
Other than
no
the
worms.
Bruins is 1-1.
Well, you
One
got.
for the Bruins.
They were behind 1-0. They just tied it. So.
What period?
Thank you very much.
They just hide it?
They just
Oh, good news, thank
Nice.
you. Yeah, you guys can just do your own, you can walk the street, stuff across the street to Brick End Farms, right?
Here you go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you all.
Charlie Coyle.
All right. Finally, and with my sincere apologies to the town manager, we skipped his report. I think this is the second time. I'm sorry.
I'm going to, it is, I'm starting to get a little bit of complex on it.
Mr. Chair, may I interrupt you and the town
Yeah.
manager for a second? I noticed this on my packet. I don't know if you've made this announcement or not. I don't know if you were going to
It's in
plan
my
on
town
doing it.
manager report, and I never got
Okay,
it.
okay.
I just wanted to point this out, that we should definitely let the residents know about the National Grid.
So they should have received this in the mailing. I'm going to actually offer to nod to the town manager report tonight. We'll get it up online this week. I will do just bring attention to what Sean pointed out. Due to the rain last week, National Grid's planned outage to conduct system upgrades on their lines in Hamilton had to be rescheduled. The new date they are hoping to utilize is Tuesday, June 11th, with a possible rain date of June 12th. As we noted at the last meeting, the planned outage should only impact about 140 or so customers, and all customers will be informed in writing by the utility. This is a copy of the letter that was sent to all the residents that would be impacted. So, the rest of the stuff, it'll be in the town manager's report. There's some interesting stuff there. Hopefully, once we get it up online, folks will find out that we have settled, or we've accepted bids on ambulance and senior van service. There's good news.
Beauport or?
Beauport won, but the Beauport ambulance contract is going to pay us approximately $8,500 more than the old contract did. Unfortunately, the town shuttle will cost us about $10,500
right.
more than the old one did. So, but the good news is that we went through a bidding process. We were not required to on the ambulance. We thought that for the sake of transparency, it had been a number of years, several contracts with Beauport, it made sense to see what was out there. We put it out and asked, and we got 2 bids back, and Beauport had the best bid by far financially. And on the senior van, it was a quote process. Again, we solicited 3 quotes, and we got 2. So.
And Beauport's paying us rent. Right.
Well, that's how it works out. It's a 0 bid contract on actually doing the ambulance service, but they pay us rent for the space, and they pay us a monthly fee for dispatch, for providing dispatch. So it works out to actually be a better contract for us than the last contract we had.
Right.
Good.
Mr. Chair, may I back up
Yes.
just a little bit? Just back to the trash pickup private ways. We didn't really come to any decision on the policy Joe drafted. I mean, not necessarily we need to come to a decision, but I'd almost like to treat this as kind of a first reading, if we might, and have council look at it, and then everyone who has any kind of input, Darcy or Bill, and we'll forward it to Rosie, and then get back to you about it, or Joe, whoever you want to designate to kind of take the comments and meld council's opinion in there and stuff,
and before we do the contracts, I'll ask for a little bit of input from Marissa and Tim and perhaps Angelo and Gradle, just to make sure that we're charging right. I mean, Casella said it's only going to cost us X to pick up, but if we want to make sure we can consider the potential cost of tipping fees, I don't know how we would get into estimating the tonnage. So it becomes a difficult thing. We'll have to put it.
And maybe there's just an average of, we can average out every home and then figure out from there, or something like that.
So it'll be a little bit more than what they were proposing, but I think still in a lot better position than where they are currently. So.
Right.
Okay.
And I think if we get the policy ironed out, and we'll let Joe figure out all the operational kind of stuff like that's in his purview. So, and then obviously Joe will share all that with us.
Yeah. I mean, we know that by adding the houses, we'll add at least that
number.
Number. If the other things that we look at, or the board looks at as far as composting and getting people to help us drive down the cost, it'd be a net wash on that. So that'd be a good thing. So we have to at least try to recover the cost of the pickup.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the guidance.
All right. We are at new business, consideration for topics for future meetings. Anybody have any?
We've got a few tonight. The policy we're talking about here.
Yeah.
The CPC joint meeting.
You wanted that for July 1st, though, because of the posting requirements, not for the June 17th meeting.
Yeah, I think it was the posting requirements when I talked to Dora today. July 1st was probably the earliest we could do it.
I would remind you, just on that note, if you don't mind me interrupting, that you had asked for a joint meeting with the Board of Assessors. We could do that either on the 17th or at a meeting later in, but it would probably be helpful if you came up with a date that you wanted to do that, so we could request them to come.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
That works.
I'm going to tentatively put down 6/17, because what I'm hoping is that we might be able to introduce a director of assessing to both boards at the same time, and then,
I think that'd be good.
It might be a little optimistic.
Right, but
we're only interviewing tomorrow, Thursday,
but
I like being an optimist. So.
Yes, I was wondering, I mentioned this earlier, could we have, when is the Capcom going to meet? I'm the liaison, so I've been waiting.
Yeah, no, I have had a doodle pull out, as you saw. I thought I had it. I thought I had us all buckled up to Thursday, the 14th or something, but I heard from Bill Wilson today, he's unavailable on that date. So he hasn't filled out the doodle poll yet. So I texted him, I'm like, hey, could you let me know when you're, and so he's going to fill it out for me tonight or tomorrow morning, and then once I see what date everybody's available, I may have to call somebody and say, hey, everybody's available on this date, could you make yourself available?
Right.
But hopefully in the next 2 weeks of June here.
And then after they have their first meeting, I suggested if we could have a joint meeting with the FinCom, the CAPCOM, and the BOS, just so everyone could kind of put their heads together and brainstorm and try to get priorities. You know, everyone's got great ideas, and
that's a
that
good
would be
idea.
a good way to
Very good idea.
talk about them.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'll add one more thing that I can think of now, and I'll send you some other topics as well, Jeff. But just since we're talking about the National Grid, the improvements on the system, I know they wanted to come back to talk to us, to tell us about some of the improvements. It might be worthwhile after they do this to talk to them about what they did and why they did it and what's going to change.
Maybe that we've talked about, maybe we should need to have a utility meeting where we talk about that, and we've talked about water from the basics, why is it brown sometimes, to why I can't have water on my landscaping, to...
Right.
That's a good idea.
Right, because we've got the kind of annual mandatory ban, right? And that everyone, I've heard a couple grumblings, well, why is there a ban? Well, it's the one that we always kind of do. It's just...
Right.
Do you want to plan that one for sometime in July?
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
And the water one was a little bit more encompassing. We're talking about bringing on a third party.
Yeah, some kind of a
Get
beta
some
group or
polls out
something
there
like
to
that,
figure out what it
right?
would cost to have somebody do like a water assessment of our town, as well as educate our community. Because with the whole patent thing too, that's gonna be a big topic
Yeah, it's
tomorrow,
gonna
is
be
water.
big, yeah.
The only other one I had was the Wenham, was a joint meeting with them.
Yeah, so,
So I had
Jack.
I had
Go
a
ahead.
conversation with the town administrator there. They're okay with that idea. Two different things. The town administrator
Excuse me, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, it's a
I'm
joint meeting with the
sorry.
Wenham Board of Selectmen.
Oh,
to talk
regarding
about
water.
No,
to talk about
sorry,
just
I had two
shared-
issues. The water one we talked about, and then the second one was the joint meeting.
Kind of
Sorry.
shared
Oh, shared
challenges and-
services.
Shared services, but
Okay,
also
thank
shared
you.
challenges. I think Bill, at the last meeting, had mentioned that we know that MassDOT is studying putting in a new signal on Bay Road in
Yes.
front of the Wenham Town Hall, or nearby to the Wenham Town Hall. So just to kind of get some understanding of those things that they're pursuing that we might need to know about, and vice versa. The board chair in Wenham, through the town administrator, said they'd be okay with that. They just want to have us work on a closely defined agenda with action items. They don't want to just have a meeting where
I agree.
everybody sits around,
Right.
talks, and nothing gets done.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So,
Fair. Yeah, that's
if
fair.
you guys want to provide me with some ideas of agenda items that you think could be addressed with specific actions during that meeting, I'd put it forward to Mr. Petron and let him run it by his board to have, to start to organize an agenda around that.
Great.
And they have a interim town manager now, or they have?
John Petron is the interim town administrator right now. He's retired. He had almost 40 years of service, most recently in Burlington. He just retired out of Burlington last year. Great guy, very, very knowledgeable, and very fun and easy to work with. They're in their process now for a new town administrator. My understanding, I picked this up at the MMA conference last week. My understanding is that they are hoping to have, the Board of Selectmen is hoping to be able to make an appointment the first week of July. So they're in the interviewing phase now with their contractor.
Okay.
I
All
don't know
right.
any of the candidates yet. I don't know who they are yet, so.
I will accept a motion to go into executive session, not to return to open meeting.
And do you have the kind of cheat sheet in the drawer there in front of you, Jeff, on the verbiage?
Is there?
If not, I'm sure our town council might be able to help. I might still have it in my binder.
If it's in his drawer over there.
Do you have anything in that drawer, blue?
There was a one pager that was here forever. Oh, here, purposes for convening.
It's a green piece of kind of cardstock paper.
No.
Is there a green piece of paper in there? No.
Interesting.
Donna, do you want to take a hassle at offering them an motion?
Oh, here you go.
There we go. It's not green, but, well, that was at the back of this thing here.
That's the back
Take that.
page.
Flip it over, Jeff. There's something on the backside too.
To discuss strategy, that one.
Yeah, it's like the second one down or something, maybe, third one down. Duke, you want to say anything before you get kicked out?
Wait for you to close the meeting.
Oh.
Yeah. For the purpose, I request a motion that the board vote to convene an executive session for the purposes of, in this case, you're going to strategy
Read 'em
and
out.
next steps for potential 550 Highland Avenue litigation, strategy and next steps for potential Tobacco Trails litigation, and review findings of alleged harassment investigation. How did I get that all right so far? And then,
Yeah, and more.
Well, I think varsity.
At least according to your agenda, you also have strategy.
That was
so
changed.
that was
Okay.
changed. The other item,
17th.
there's no current information to share, so we're
Okay.
going to hold that off till the next meeting.
Okay, and then you want to have the chair declare that discussing the litigation matters in open session would be
Have a detrimental effect on.
Right.
And then
not to return to open session.
turn in open session, and it's got to be by a voice vote. Everybody's got a
Roll call.
roll call vote.
Roll
sorry.
call vote.
Roll call vote.
Okay. Thank you, Donna. Is that clear to everybody?
This is in the minutes.
I was going to put you on the spot.
This
Say
is in the
anything again,
minutes.
Jeff.
Mary Alice is going to have this looking just the way it's supposed to look.
Okay. So we can do a roll call vote?
Further
Start
discussion?
Bill.
Let him
Oh,
discuss.
further
I'll-
discussion, sure.
Wait, further discussion? He has to talk
Close
before.
the meeting.
Okay,
Did anybody second it?
Second.
Okay.
okay.
William Olson, aye.
Sean Farrell, aye.
Darcy Dale, aye.
Jeff Hubbard, aye.
You're done. I have a quick question. Ashby Street, that new project, is that going to be a public street?
Canterbrook? I have to look at it. I think it's private way. Canterbrook is.
Because
It
it's
looks like a cul-de-sac.
very, very narrow.